Hello and welcome to the Hero Life Show. My name is Paulie and today we have a wonderful guest on the show. Her name is Melissa Cave. She's a life coach who has been through her own personal experience when it comes to motherhood and transitioning into the parenting way of life. And from what I understand, she's really navigated certain challenges with that, and she's made it a part of who she is, and now she uses her experiences and her knowledge to be able to guide mothers in this space. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure. Melissa, I'm so keen. I delved into some of your content, and I love the way that you do convey a lot of your messaging. It's playful, it's fun, and it really resonated with me. I'm keen to know what your experiences have been with motherhood and how you transitioned into it. And let's start there, shall we?
Yeah. So transition is a great word, because I think at first, for sure, when I look back, when I was a first-time mom, compared to where I am now, it's a big difference. And I think, that's part of what motherhood is that evolving. But yeah, for sure. In the beginning, motherhood for me looks like a lot of judgment, a lot of self-doubt, questioning pretty much everything I was doing, looking to books and the internet for the answers instead of really checking with myself and following my intuition. I feel like in a way, you kind of lose your intuition sometimes, and as a first-time parent, because there's so much messaging from society, our friends, our parents, and that was where I was till and then we kind of talk about now the big transition, and like for me, it was a lot of things, but really simplifying and figuring out what mattered to me, and not just what everyone else says I have to do. And the other big piece is the mindset work, and really learning that I'm actually really powerful and I can change how I think about things, which then creates a totally different experience. And that has been so helpful.
That's wonderful. Just to know that you have the power and the mindset to be able to employ an empowered way of life for you as an individual is going to be able to, I suppose, follow through to your family and the way that actually operates. So tell me a little bit about the challenges that you did experience when you first moved into motherhood, and how you've kind of navigated into where you are now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the challenges, I think, was just for me, I have very, very high expectations of myself and, like perfectionist tendencies and all of that. And that was where I was. So I think the bar for me, I had it like really high, and there was no room for compassion with myself. And I know when I learned of that for the first time, like, oh, wait a minute, I can be compassionate with myself. Like, what do you mean? And that was like, mind blowing to me, because my inner voice was very negative, always focused on the negative. And so, yeah, it was questioning everything. Oh, and beating myself up. Oh, my kid's not getting what I think is the right amount of sleep. Like, oh, like it was always putting that on me or putting that on the kid. Something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with my kid. And now I'm able to see like, that doesn't have to be true at all. What they're doing, how they're sleeping, that's just like a circumstance. That's just what's happening. And I get to choose, like, if I make that mean all those things, I'm doing something wrong, or something's wrong with them, or just they're having a bad sleep day like we all do. And that's where really it's been amazing to see that I was actually creating a lot of my own suffering by the way I was choosing to think about things.
Yeah, makes complete sense. And how have you found guiding mothers in circumstances like this? How have you found it to be an efficient way to communicate these types of issues when it comes to parenthood?
Yeah, the first step is really just becoming aware of what is going on, because I think often we're so in it that we can't see it, so really that's a big piece of my job, is just helping moms become aware of how they are thinking about what's going on, and how that, is creating how they're feeling, and what motherhood looks like for them. Or a lot of times I think we get stuck in the day-to-day routines, and then we're not actually enjoying motherhood, which is kind of interesting, because I think nobody becomes a parent usually to not enjoy it. But it happens, right? We get so stuck we get busy with different things. And then, so just kind of slowing down, stepping back, and really looking at things.
And why do you think so many of us in today's day and age feel like we need to be the perfect parent? We need to, whatever that means. We need to follow a checklist of to-dos and to-don'ts, and all of these types of, things that really just kind of bombard our mindset.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a combination, really. But of course, like I mentioned, the messaging that we get from society, like the conditioning we've been brought up around. But I think it comes down to, a lot of it is judgment, like our fear of judgment. Like, we're afraid if we do something a certain way, what we would consider the wrong way, we're going to be judged. We're going to be looked upon as a bad mom or something like that. And we don't want that. So we think we have to check all the boxes to be that perfect parent. I think the other thing that plays in is like defining what that even means. Like you said, what is a perfect parent? What is a good mom? What is a bad mom? Like it's really, that's an important exercise to do. What does that mean for us? Because a lot of times, again, we just kind of go through the motions, and we're doing the things we think we have to do to be perfect.
Yeah.
Not questioning them. And then it's like, if we slow down and question it, oh, you know what? Being a good mom to me is actually X, Y, and Z, and that's all it is. And I don't have to do all these other things.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's been an awakening journey for me as a parent as well, just to look at how involved as a parent you are in each stage of development of your children. With my eldest, who is now 4, when she was 6 months old, I remember all my peers who had children a similar age, everyone was looking at the development of their child. Are they crawling? Are they, or whatever time period it is? Mm-hmm. Is my child crawling at the right time? Are they standing at the right time? Are they talking at the right time? If you ask me when my child crawled, stood, walked, talked now, as my child being a 4-year-old, I would have no idea, nor would I care a great deal about it either. But when we're in the thick of it, when we're feeling this, and when we're a member of a community in a tribe, and the clutter and the noise is there to be able to, for lack of a better word, judging one another, that can be a really difficult rut to get out of.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate, because we do especially use those milestones to, I guess, like I talked about that I experienced, like make that mean, oh, I'm doing something wrong. What's wrong with my kid? They're not crawling when they're supposed to crawl. And it's like, maybe they're just going to crawl later, and that's okay. Like, what if it wasn't a problem?
100%. And that's definitely the experience I've had as well. I have a 9-month-old now, and I'm going through it again. But it's interesting to go through it the second time with a renewed, refreshed experience, having experienced it for the first time. As you know, and as we discussed before, part of my audience is a fathers, and I'd love for you to give your thoughts and understandings behind how this might be relevant to parenting in the male sphere as well.
Yeah. I think, like, I've talked a lot about conditioning. I'd be interested in your thoughts on this too, because I know it's different for men, the conditioning things that are brought up around versus women. But what I'm guessing is a strong one. I think often dads are raised, like, conditioned to think they have to be like the authority figure, where they have to be like the disciplinarian. I don't know. I mean, I think at least when my parents, like when we were growing up, it was like that. And so I think there's like an unlearning there of actually, like, you don't have to do that. And I think maybe sometimes there's that expectation. And what I would say to that, a big piece of parenting for me and what I like to help moms with too is like connection and creating those solid relationships with our children. And to me, that starts with connection and not the traditional like harsh discipline and everything. And so what I would say for dads is like the two big things is like a child has to feel safe and they have to feel connected before they're ever going to cooperate and be able to problem solve. And so if, you're feeling pressure to be more of that authority figure and yelling and all of that, maybe you were raised around, and that's totally normal, by the way, that your brain wants to go to that because like that's how you've been brought up and conditioned. So it's like an unlearning of that and learning a new way, because really the more that you do show up in that way, that authoritarian, like yelling way, like actually that's getting you further from being connected and having the relationship that you probably want.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the challenges that come up with parenting, at least that I've experienced and my peers have experienced, is, children's minds operate and function in a very different way to the way we do. They have a very different life experience to us, and even the brainwave function that they experience is very different to our brainwave function. So being able to communicate and relate on their level can be quite a challenge, because we're dealing with almost two different languages at times.
Yeah. Yeah. And really even just knowing that, because like our brains aren't fully mature. I think nowadays they say it's like around 25 or something is when like the brain is fully mature. So yeah, just knowing that and reminding yourself, like they don't have the executive functioning of the brain. They don't have the ability to reason and understand. And especially not when they're, throwing a fit or something, like their brain is not going to understand anything you're trying to teach them in that moment.
So let's use the example of, and I'm sure everyone who is listening to this has experienced it, your child having a tantrum or a fit. I hate to put you on the spot, but like in your experience, and I can only ask you for this, when your child has experienced something like this, what is your initial go-to port of call?
Yeah, for how to handle it, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And for sure, I mean, this was something I had to unlearn too, because I used to have for sure, like be triggered by that. And I would notice myself getting really upset, really frustrated, wanting to yell. And so that was like I talked about, a whole unlearning. So now how I would handle that is how I would attempt to handle that. Like I'm not perfect. I still have those moments. But I think it's about, what's really powerful for me is I try to ask myself, like, if that was me, what would I want? What would I need in that moment? And I think that's just a really powerful, easy way to shift. Like, oh, if I'm feeling triggered to yell, okay, but if that was me, like, and my parent yelled, like, would that be helpful? No. Okay. So what could I do instead? And, so it's about the empathy, I think, getting down on their level, making eye contact, and really just validating their feelings. It's kind of interesting because I think really adults, kids, like we all want the same thing when we think about it. Like we want to feel seen and heard. We want to feel like we matter. And so often, even if you don't necessarily solve the problem or whatever they're upset about, if you can just kind of validate what they're experiencing, which might sound like, oh, you're feeling frustrated because your block tower fell over. I understand. What could I do to help you? Or do you want to rebuild it together? Like they might not even care about rebuilding it, but just the fact that you acknowledged like their experience works wonders sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. I'd love to just bring up the element of self-care when it comes to parenting. I know I've definitely found myself in this position, and I know so many others that I've spoken to have as well. When you transition into that parenthood role, you as an individual, as a person who deserves care and attention, health, love, support, self-care, seems to really take a back seat for many of us. So much so that it becomes so far in the back seat and in the rearview mirror that you can't see it anymore. And you, after time, and I've found this from dealing with a lot of mothers and fathers, you tend to really lose a sense of who you are as a person. And I'd just love to get your insight into what your perspective is on this.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah, I think that is common. Losing ourselves in motherhood. It's just, I mean, if we think about it, it makes sense. It can be easy to happen just because there is a lot of new responsibilities that we're not familiar with. But I think another piece of it is, like I talked about earlier, thinking that we have to have such that high bar of expectations. Everything has to be perfect. And I think we kind of, in a way, become consumed with doing everything for our kids. Like you said, then we forget about ourselves. And maybe I think another piece, at least for moms, is like the mom guilt. We think like, oh, well, if I don't want to take time away from my kid to spend on me, like that's not right. But what I would say to that is, you have to start with yourself, because like you said, if you let it take the backseat for too long, you're going to like burn out. It's going to lead to so many more things. But if you take care of yourself first, like that pours out to everyone else, right? Like you're going to show up better for your partner, spouse, and your kids, and even your job, like everywhere. So I know some people like hate self-care. They think, oh, it's bubble baths and whatever. I don't have time for that. But it's like, no, like you need to figure out what works for you and like make the time for it, because it's so important.
It sure is. And self-care can look so different to so many people, Self-care can just be taking a moment to take some deep breaths and just control that sympathetic nervous system and really bring yourself down into a controlled, grounded state. Self-care can be doing some exercise. So many parents I speak to feel guilty doing exercise and literally giving themselves more years on their biological clock to be present and to be active parents into your child's future, or kind of giving yourself healthy food and nourishment, etc. And ultimately, it's a challenging paradigm that we live in, because ultimately, like you said, you need to be able to give yourself that kind of love, care, and attention if you want to be able to be present for your children. But another incredibly important part that I've kind of witnessed is if you do that, your children will be witnessing you doing that, and they'll be observing you, and they'll subconsciously take on exactly the way you're treating yourself in that way as well.
Yeah. Can I actually share a funny story that goes along with that?
Please.
Yeah. So recently, my husband and I had a really good workout habit until COVID, and the kids came home full time, and then that kind of all fell apart. And so we've recently recommitted to that and actually set up like a workout space, and got a TV out there and different weight set and all of that. And it's been really cool to see just modeling for our kids, because I invited them to join the workout a couple times and they were kind of like, no thanks. But then as I did it more and more, they were like interested, and they join a little bit and just do it for a little bit. And then they got to where like they're on the weekend, we'll at least do one family workout all together. And now this past weekend, they asked me twice. They're like, hey mom, can we do a workout? And then one day they even did it on their own. They're like, can we go do a workout? And just my two kids did it together. And I was like, that's so cool.
That's fair. And that all started with you guys creating a safe environment to really demonstrate how healthy and how good for you it is. And then once they observe that, that opens the door for them to be able to do it. And then they experience all the incredible endorphins they're going to get from doing the workout. On top of that, the connection that they have with you guys as well when you're doing it as a family. It's a beautiful, powerful thing. So well done on intuitively kind of stepping that up.
Yeah, that was awesome. Well, we just know when we were younger, nobody modeled that for us, those healthy habits. So we're like, that's something we want to do for them. And I was just really surprised to see them take to it so quickly, I guess. So that was really neat.
Well, that's unbelievable. Look, it's been so wonderful talking to you about everything that you've experienced yourself in parenthood and how you're kind of growing as a parent and a mum. And are there any other words of advice that you could offer to people listening to this, mothers or fathers out there that people can activate perhaps even today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think. What would I say? I think the first thing I would say is just don't be so hard on yourself. I know it probably sounds easier said than done, but really going back to that self-love thing, like when you can love yourself, it's really interesting because actually I think we tend to look outside of ourselves for validation and we want to feel good. We want other people to tell us, how wonderful of a mom or dad we are. And of course that does feel good, but if we can get to the place where we truly love ourselves and like feel good about what we're doing, even if we screw up, even if we yell, like have compassion. And when we can be in that space, then like everyone else's comments are like the icing on the cake. Like we don't need them to feel good about ourselves. We can just feel good and then have extra, bonus. And so, yeah, don't be so hard on yourself. And I think the other thing, like I said, about my journey, I went from being so hard on myself and having such high expectations and making everything a big deal to now I'm like on the other side of that. And it's just so much more fun and enjoyable when you're not in that space. So I just really encourage you, maybe just one thing today, if you notice yourself feeling triggered or feeling angry, like maybe just question, why does that bother me? And maybe another thing you could do is just walk away. Like sometimes that's the best thing you can do, if it's safe, of course. But like you said about the deep breaths, like just go in the bathroom or whatever, shut the door and like recenter yourself. Let that nervous system calm down.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, great. That's right. And you mentioned this earlier, parenthood is something that we should be enjoying. We should be fully present for because as you would know, how old are your children, Melissa?
5 and 8.
So, before you know it, your children are going to be 5 and 8, then they're going to be 13 and 15, and then they're going to be adults. They're going to be having children on their own. So as you would know, every stage of your upbringing with your children just goes by so quickly, and be present for every part of that so you can truly relish it, enjoy it, and be present with your children on an equal level as well.
Yeah. And that's the other cool thing actually about being present is I think that actually slows down that time thing, because that's a thing, like so many people, I think, just say that like, oh, it goes by so fast, or, oh, they grow up so quick. I'm not saying that's not true, but when we can get in that space of really being present, then it slows it down a little bit, right? Like it doesn't feel like it's flying by so much. So I think like that's super powerful too.
Yeah, it's a great point to raise. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Melissa, for all the wisdom that you've shared today. It's been really, really great speaking to you. Is there anywhere that we can find you and understand more about what it is that you do?
Yeah, so Instagram is the main place that I hang out. I am at Rethink Motherhood, and you can check out, actually, it ties in well. I have a guide for moms. There's a link on there. We were talking about, what would you do with the tantrum? There's actually a whole guide about like yelling less and connecting more. So that's a great place to start if you want to learn more about that.
Fantastic. We'll get the spelling and the your label there, and we'll put it in the show notes as well.
Great.
Thank you so much for your time, Melissa.
Yeah, thanks for having me.